Panasonic, the heart of your system.
I'm Leo Walder for Kit Guru. Riotoro has done something unique in my experience. They've come up with a case that is expandable. You can move the two sections together and apart to make it either bigger or smaller depending on the needs for your build. That's unusual. Also, it has a name. We don't see very many products with names. They have well, this actually has a model code and a name. It is GPX 100, but it is also Morpheus. Morpheus, as I recall, the god of sleep and dreams. I'm trusting this case is going to be more about the dreams than the sleep. The other unique thing about Morpheus is that it comes flat packed. You have to build the thing. Here we have a panel. Here we have another panel, various filters, and that right there, well, that's clearly the back. You can see the I/O, and so on and so forth. So first things first, I'm going to have to unbox the thing completely and start doing some assembly. I've got a bunch of familiar looking components. That's either a front or back panel. No, that's a front panel. That's the back panel. Sides, tops, you know, give or take, it's all roughly familiar. It's a bit like one of those large Thermaltake cases that's big and boxy. I've also got this kind of build mat, mouse mat kind of thing, which actually appears to have some really basic build instructions on it. That I don't think is going to be a massive amount of use. Hopefully I can actually use it as a build surface. So I've downloaded the manual because stunningly there is no printed manual with this case. Really surprised about that. And if we go to the PDF, we've got a 60-page how to build your new case guide. So I'm going to grab a screwdriver and I suppose I'm going to get weaving, see if I can make sense of all this. Step 1 is to, well, I'm not going to go through all these bits and pieces and check I've got everything as per the kit list. Step 1 is to build the base and back structure. This is obviously the I/O panel here. Load of stuff in the What's-It. I need a flat working area, got that. A magnetic Phillips screwdriver. Well, it's not magnetic, but it's a Phillips screwdriver. Not sure why it says number 9, but there we have it. That's a size 2 in the usual way. And we go to section 1, back and bottom. So to start this assembly, you need to take this pre-assembled doohickey out of the What's-It. Okay, remove the trim. Remove the 2 security thumb screws. Guess that's those. I'll need later. Lift the back up that way. Make an L-shaped structure. Took out the shipping foam mini tower expansion bracket. I guess, all right, that's this thing in here, whatever this is. Right, now I guess this is going to be, because you've got the option of big or small, so that's the small version. This is the big version already installed, depending on whether the case is open or closed. Packaging. Align these, put 2 screws in now. They haven't labelled the bags as screws, so they are just screws. I mean, they're separated but not labelled. I find that annoying. So these, judging by the fact there's 20 on the bag, appear to be the structure screws. So I stuck a little bit of tape on there to tell me that. I find that aggravating, and there's a Tiddlet 80mm fan there for the exhaust. Big case, small fan. 2 screws. They do go from the rear. Okay, that makes sense, because that's where the screw holes are. Oops. Right, adjust the height of the adjustable top. Oh, I see, okay, whoops. It goes up and down. God. To align the structure screw holes of the top and the panel. Tighten 6 screws on each side to secure the top where you want it, I guess. So I take it, if I want it all the way down, I'd need to swap out that panel. I'm going to stick with big, I think. Okay, It's all a bit flexy at the moment. Let's see if that works. So not the bottom one, because I'm going for the upper position. Oh, I see. So it's like 2 from the sides, 4 at the rear by the look of it. To secure the I/O panel, is that? So one screw goes in there, okay. So that's the top of the I/O. Right, that makes sense. Align the fan, that's that. Right, so the fan is going on the inside and it's expelling to the rear, exhausting to the rear. And the drawing doesn't show the fan cable, so we're guessing the orientation. That's the I/O there. I'm going to guess the cable wants to go like that. Don't really know. Right, so that would appear to be the back and the base done. This is the trim doohickey that's gonna go on here, I guess, afterwards when it's all done. We shall see. Let's put that to one side. Right, middle panel assembly. Provided a successful section 1 assembly, well, successful-ish. Middle panel and its components. Take the pre-assembled middle panel, well that's that, and the base plate, that's that, and the HD stabilizer, that's that, and structure screws, which appear to be these. Align the holes for the pre-assembled middle panel and the base plate. Oh, I see, so it stands on there like that, okay. And join parts, right, so this has get the HDD stabilizer, that's that fella there. That goes on the cage, which is now around this side. Oh my Lord. So that's going on here, like that. Once it's assembled, place it inside the section 1 build. Well, kind of here. Right, so that to that hole there. This is one of the more weird bits of DIY build I've ever done, I have to say. Right. I almost feel like saying something like I'm on the verge of, you know, making a mistake or something, just to kind of get ahead of all the wisecracks. Turn the build over, place and tighten a screw located in the bottom. All right, that's to attach that thing. Turn it to the upright position, which is with this side facing me. Take the additional SSD bracket, that's that. Slide it into position, use the thumb screw to secure it here. So I guess it wasn't installed before. Okay, that thread doesn't feel great. Never mind, it's on. 3 top front panel assembly. Provided a second number 2, what's it? Well, we'll see. To start, take the assembled top and front panel out, and let's take out these 2 thumb screws as per the other panel before, like so. Lift that up, take the cooling bracket and the 2 100s. Oh, I see, that's the I/O cables, so that's that. Tighten 2 structure screws. Right, so that bag there I'm taking to be more of these. So this is, well, I'm happy about that, but the instructions aren't the greatest. Right, as I was saying, right, there are the 2 screw holes. Put 2 more screws in. Where was I? So that was the slidey top part, wasn't it? Yep. Okay. 2 screws. I do now have an L-shaped structure. Remove the structure screws, adjust... What? I see, remove these 2 screws here, adjust the height. Presumably to match the back, you'd think. Okay, that's looking promising. Align the middle structure and tighten 8 structure screws in the side so that I take, we've already got 2 of them in, so that's nonsense. That's the front, that's the, well, that looks approximately correct. There are so many ways this could be better. Turn the L shape upright and place it on, well, the big build. Remove the filter. So that's the 6 at the front, and then the 2 at the bottom at the rear. I suppose if we're going to say something positive here, it is that if the structure was riveted in the usual way, you couldn't fully dismantle it. Obviously I'm having to assemble it. So therefore I suppose we can at least say this might be of interest to modders, because they can pull the thing down to its smallest components, and that's something they often want to do. See, something positive. Okay, 2 screws on the top, number 3. section, trim side panel assembly. Okay, so that's all the various bits and pieces. So what the guide says to do is to secure, say, this piece of trim panel here, 3 screws from the outside, 2 screws from the inside, and it says to use structure screws from the inside, that's these fellas here, and trim screws from the outside, that's these fellas here. And it's got it completely incorrect. The trim screws go into the brass inserts, the structure screws go into the stamped inserts that are in the material. So that is wrong. And now we attempt to install the trim screws in the correct place. And look at that, loads of access. I think we can agree to get in there. Oh yeah, I think we use a more slimline screwdriver. Really? Okay, Riotoro, you lost your mind. So now you want me to get screws in there and in there to secure these trim panels. Wouldn't it have made more sense to have put this trim panel screw in before I put this extra drive caddy in the way? I think it would. Let's just move that out. Oh look, I can see the screw hole now. That's better. And now a screw in there. Page 38. Slide the top and bottom trim into position. This is going to be at the front. Structure screws, 8 of from the inside, so presumably 4 per panel. Okay, I can handle that. Are the top and the bottom handed or identical? They appear to be identical. I'm concerned about the fact it says structure screws when those are those brass threads, which says to me that we want trim screws. Let us see what we have. And we have a bag of trim screws, so we'll just ignore what it says there and we'll go with trim screws. Hooky type things that go into there, like so. Right, happy days, we can see what we're doing. Another positive point, the little build mat doing a reasonable job. These instructions, yeah, right. Right. Right, so that's the front trim stuff done. Okay. Snap the cooling bracket on the front panel from the inside. Secure it in position with a structure screw from there. Okay. This bracket goes in this side. Hooks in like so. Pulls up against that. Single screw there. Cables are behind it, that's all fine. Not quite sure why you don't put the fans on first. I'd have thought you'd be removing that in a moment to put the fans on it. We shall see. That took 45 minutes to 60 minutes or so of mucking around, and we now have a case. Hurrah! Let me take off. Do you know, I don't know if this is a flipped design or not, so I'm going to... Which panel do I take off? If I take... I think I take off this panel. Here we go. So 4 thumb screws, and away comes the panel. I've taken off all the magnetic dust filters because, which are like sort of much bigger versions of these. The entire thing is filtered because I needed access to these screws to extend the panel. Yes, I did do it correctly. Okay. And that is what the interior of this newly built case looks like. So it is indeed inverted. So the I/O is down the bottom, the expansion's up the top. We've got the motherboard tray. It can take up to E80X. I/O panel is on the top at the front in the conventional styly. Loads of dust filtering. It's a dual chamber design, so the power supply goes, if I've got this right, vertically behind the motherboard tray. So I say dual chamber, but I mean, you've got this power supplies behind the motherboard. And I have yet to install these 2 fans that are supplied on the cooling bracket at the front. I've also got an accessory box of fans that Riotoro sent, and they say you can use either dual fans up the front or 1-200, depending on what you want to do. But there's obviously loads of space in this configuration, and now finally it's time to actually get on and build a PC and see what I think of it. When I first started assembling the Morpheus case from all those components, I was concerned how it's going to turn out because it was lots of black bits and it didn't really inspire me. However, I think it's actually turned out looking okay. In particular, I like the radiuses. There's also symmetry because of it's the 2 halves that go together, so you can have the rise fall to expand the size of the case. Nonetheless, I do not entirely understand why this case is supplied in kit form. It seems to me unnecessary. A great many very large cases come fully assembled. This is not a massive case, not compared to some thermal takes on the market, and yet here we are. The only sort of logical explanation is that because you might want to assemble it in this expanded form or in the compact form, therefore you have to make a decision at some stage, so they might, you know, I don't quite follow that. I think they could have supplied this case in sort of 2 big bits and then given you the choice of either the full I/O panel at the rear or the small I/O panel, and even that I'm not convinced about. We've seen Be Quiet with that Dark Base 900 where you had the option of moving things around and bits can rise and fall. The fact that you're going to cover some of the expansion slots necessarily if you do it in compact form. Anyway, the other fundamental thing here is, well, 2 fundamental things. The build quality, once it's assembled, is okay. When it's kind of going together, bits wobble around and it gets a little bit, the build quality when it's together, I'm not going to say it's up to quite the same standards as, say, a Fractal or a Corsair or a Fantex, but it's perfectly all right. In a way, it's like watching a sausage being made. You know what goes into it, and then you see the finished result. You have to kind of forget the process along the way. So build quality and the look, I'm fine with. I thought I might not be, but I am. The overall concept, however, I'm not so sure. Here's the thing. That's the difference between full open and compact. If you close it down, you can see the difference. It's 60mm, 6 centimeters, and you can see how these parts here will go around the illuminated logo on the front of the Riotoro logo, which apparently is something to do with a bull. You can see it if you kind of imagine it. But the problem is this. It's a dual chamber case, therefore it has a large footprint. It's wide. Power supply that side drives that side, main compartment this side. Height is not the thing with the dual chamber case, it's the footprint. So the fact you can make it slightly lower, so what? I mean, what of it? Why don't they put 2 cases on the market? This is E80X as it is, but you could go for big, small, 2 different cases and maybe 2 different prices. You wouldn't have to mess around assembling the thing. It would be better to my mind. If you're going to go with this big, small, expandy thing, I think there should be marks. I also think the idea you have to remove a whole load of screws to, say, extend the side panels and move the plate in the middle, pull the 2 parts and the screw slots. Here's the thing, slacken screws, pull, tighten screws, not remove 8 screws per side panel plus God knows how many screws for the actual chassis. That part not well thought through. Also, there are various errors throughout the manual, little errors here and there. You actually do better almost just to work kind of almost blind using your common sense and this really basic outline on the build mat, mouse mat. Because when you stick to the letter of the instructions, you'll be led astray on occasion. Little bits here and there. One small complaint about the manual. This case comes with an 80mm rear fan, more of that in a moment, but it says or two 140s at the rear, which is just nonsense. You can put 120s at the top and at the front, no trouble whatsoever, and indeed 140s. At the rear, it's that 80, not 140s. Errors like that, someone should have caught them, and it just strikes me, it feels like it's a really small development team working on this product. On the subject, the 80mm rear fan, 80mm rear fan, but again you see, big footprint, but the main compartment small. In fact, let me just spin this around so you can see what the hell I'm talking about. And I must confess, I'm not mad keen about the look inside, albeit it's solid panels rather than windows, although we kind of got this implication, this suggestion from Riotoro when the case launched that there would be accessories coming, including glass panels. So, you know, we'll see about that. Be interesting to see if those expand, won't it? Or if they have to supply, you know, big and small versions. I mean, they could be in kit form. Anywho, the cable management and such like is just, it's a catastrophe. I mean, you can see that. I've installed a Corsair H115i, that's a 280mm, so 2x140 at the front. The two fans that ought to be at the front, I've actually pulled those out, as you can see, and I've put two other Riotoro fans in the roof of the case, but the principle's much for much. That happens to be a box of 3, I've used 2, but in essence what I've done is I've moved these fans to the roof, that's what I've done. So illumination and such like all perfectly pretty, but very, very basic. As stock it's red rather than RGB, these fans happen to be RGB. Obviously I've got an RGB motherboard, so I do have a certain amount of light going on. In terms of other styling, thumb screws, I've chosen to use the red thumb screws rather than the black thumb screws, just for a bit of kind of contrast, but that's a trivial detail. So the 80mm rear fan, I'm not mad keen, but the point here is that a dual chamber case, because this chunk is taking up the power supply, the actual main compartment is really only that. It's not large. It means you've got not a lot of clearance for an air cooler, certainly not a giant tower, and actually the graphics card is also quite close for comfort. So cable, not the graphics card itself is no trouble, but if it's a big graphics card and you're trying to get the power connectors in, you might actually struggle, surprisingly, because again, the case looks huge. Also, no option for a vertical graphics card, and so on and so forth. I can't remember the last time I actually built a PC with an 80mm rear fan. It was some Leanne Lee back in the day. So if you have a really long memory, we used to have 80mm fans, then we went to the mighty 92mm fans, and then 120s came along, and whew, that was a big thing. And that's a terribly long time ago. In that respect, this is a real throwback. So the essence of the GPX 100 Morpheus is that you build it yourself, not that that's actually a feature they put forward, but it is. So if you're interested in modding or doing some variant during your build, clearly that's a good thing. If you're intending to buy a case, you then have to pull down to its smallest components, that's a bit of a bore. So that might be a feature for some people. The fact you can go from this compact ho-ho, because it's still a huge footprint, to tall thing, I personally couldn't care less about that. However, it is clearly a, I think, well, not quite unique feature, because that Be Quiet Dark Base does something similar in a different way, but nonetheless very few cases do that. The Dark Base is the one that comes to mind. You cannot flip the motherboard, it is inverted, but you don't have the option of handing the thing, so compared to that other case you don't have as many options, so it's quirky, no doubt about that. It flows air like a champ, but then let's face it, it's fully perforated. The front has got certain restrictions because of the mesh and then the filters, but the side panels, they flow air loads. The top, so it's filtered and it flows air, and that's good. On the other hand, if I crank up the fan speed on this Corsair, you've got, you know, you can do custom profiles, but you've got quiet, balanced, and performance. Performance is blooming loud. And every so often, when I was kind of opening 3D Mark or something to do thermal tests, the fans are just brought up to speed. I think it's 1500 from memory. Very loud, really properly loud. So yes, it flows air, but I chose to go with the all-in-one because it was partly to save time, but also because a custom loop in this case, it didn't actually strike me as being all that massively straightforward. I mean, there's loads of space. I could have mounted a pump res at the front and I'd have been okay, but it was just a bit meh. And as you don't have glass side panels or acrylic even, it struck me as no, I'll go with the all-in-one, and the build makes sense to me. Spec is, it's a 12-core Intel Core i9, it's a Gigabyte X299 Aorus Master motherboard, power supply Seasonic Focus Plus, it's 1000 watt, RTX 2080 graphics card. So the build is a full-on gaming PC, cooling no trouble whatsoever, the look very much a matter of personal taste. Overall, I'm ending this review somewhat baffled because the idea you build your own case, or assemble your own case, not build it, and it's costing you £170 to deliver something a tad quirky. It's a curious animal. On the plus side, it's different, and in this sort of era where you get samey, it certainly isn't that. Having said all that, I know there are going to be people who are going to say, well, it's all right, but where's the optical drive bay and such like, because that tends to be the way it goes with cases. People hang on certain things. So I'm going to say, in that respect, no optical drive bay, but you get a good I/O panel with a USB 3 and also Type-C 2 of. So, you know, pays money, it takes choice. So although this does have integrated buttons to control lighting and such like, in terms of RGB, not so much. So really this is much more towards the direction, actually it's not towards the direction of Be Quiet, because it's not quiet. It's a Be Quiet that isn't quiet. That's what Riotoro has done. I finally got there. It's the Morpheus isn't quiet, unless you turn the fans down. Definitely an unusual case. Interesting, but not one for me personally. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. If you want more from Kit Guru, click to subscribe. There we go, subscribe. Then we'll tell you about more videos as they become available. I'm Leo Waldock. This is the Riotoro GPX 100 or Morpheus.